Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the Infinite Chains podcast. Here we are again with another amazing team. We're going to talk about e-commerce today. And I am particularly excited because I think a lot of times in this, insular blockchain world, we're talking about blockchain and pure Web3. We're talking about GameFi or DeFi, but Web3 is so much more extensible. And we're just literally hitting the tip of the iceberg. We've got two amazing builders here today whom our team's known for a while. We've been working with for a while, had the, just great experience of watching this idea grow and actually now turn into reality. So we've got Andrew and Rafael here today from Solydaria. Hey, guys.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, guys, please introduce yourself. Would love to hear more more about you, hear about, Solydaria. Your journey. How did you get here?
Well, I'll start it off, I guess. So Rafael and I, we've known each other forever, right, since undergrad. And, between the time of us, hanging out and partying in New York to us coming together to form Solydaria, there was a few years in between where we both kind of developed pretty far along in our careers, and Rafael will tell more about his. On my end, I was in New York just in media production. I pivoted into finance. Then I came back into running an agency where I identified or kind of got to firsthand experience this problem. The way I like to talk about it, because every time I can literally see the faces of the folks that were sitting across the table, were our clients coming in and asking us to build them these amazing websites. And they would drop, $50K, $100K, and it was a large chunk of their marketing budget. They would have a great product, a great idea. They kind of scraped up and saved some money to go to market, with inventory coming in from China at that point. And we would build them these amazing, digital experiences. They'd set them up. They'd be very happy. They would open up the doors on, digital Main Street, and there was no foot traffic, And at that point, we were just building websites. And they'd come back to us and, we'd go into the conference table and they'd sit down with us and say, hey, we're happy, but we're not really happy because we thought our business would be, bumping by now.
Yeah, like you just build it and they come, right?
That's kind of the promise, right? It's the internet, right? You're just an intermediated. You don't need a store. You don't need to carry, a warehouse or any of that stuff. And we were like, okay, actually, you guys need to invest into digital marketing. And the way digital marketing works is that you have to spend almost that much just to figure out how to spend that money. So they were like, wait a second. So this is something that doesn't work right away. Like, what kind of a thing doesn't work right away? When you buy a car, nobody tells you that, hey, well, maybe you do if it's a lemon, right? So, but that's kind of the identification of the problem, that there was something really fundamentally broken with digital marketing. And this was coming in at the kind of the later stage as well, when we built out we turned to full service. So we brought on all these folks that were kind of like there for DTC 1.0, right? Where you can have these amazing customer acquisition costs. Facebook was just coming on, Instagram, Snapchat, and you can just really have a really viable business. And now it seemed like it was turning into this kind of, kind of a stacked table in a way. I don't know. It felt like a broken deal. So at that time, blockchain was coming online. I started experimenting with it. I've been, coding since I was 6, more kind of like a way of expressing myself. And I started tinkering with it. Not a lot of great solutions, but once I kind of found scale, my iteration speed came up a lot faster, and we can talk about that later. Built some prototypes, tested some things out. And by that point, Rafael and I reconnected, and we kind of, through our conversations with potential clients and partners, through our tinkering with the product, where we focused more on the interface and how it felt for the shoppers, how it felt for the brands, we came up with this idea, and I'll pass it on to Rafael from that.
You dove right in, brother.
Awesome.
I'm gonna take a step back. My background, I'm a social entrepreneur. When I was in undergrad with Andrew a long time ago, to date myself, late 90s, early 2000s, I heard stories about this project that was being built in Argentina after their economy had collapsed in what at the time was like the largest sovereign debt default in history. And it was like, 5 presidents in 3 months or something crazy like that. Everything was just totally
everybody's savings account just got blown away, right? Just
gone.
It was almost like Terra. It was like
Yeah.
during that, like
the real
those
one,
levels of inflation. Yeah.
So this project was being started by young people, right? And it was called Interruption. And I like to think of it now, where I am now, it's like we were Web3 before there was Web3. We were talking about different ways to like work and consume and invest and participate together in a way that would make a better world, a socially responsible way of doing all these things. And, we talked a lot about inefficient intermediaries and middlemen. And like at that time in their culture, like everybody was totally let down by the people in power, by the corporations, by the society. Everything just was falling apart. And so coming back to kind of interrupt ourselves and reimagine how the world could look. And so fast forward, we ended up building, I started it up in New York, and we ended up building a really interesting agriculture company. So we were working with farmers throughout Latin and Central America and the States, building fair trade, organic, biodynamic supply chains. So working with growers to help the workers get fair wages, dignified working conditions and treatment, all the way up through the consumers to help them get like healthy organic products that incidentally, when you bought them, made all these positive impacts throughout the supply chain. So, this is before the iPhone, right? We didn't have we didn't have any of the promise really even of this yet. And so right before the pandemic and during the pandemic, I wound down that project and found myself really just like dreaming in technology, looking at the way that a lot of the values and the technology going on in Web3 was really just like the technological component, and new things were possible, right? Like there are new ways to do things together, and there are new ways to get rid of intermediaries and middlemen that articulate so much about how we share and exchange value and how we distribute the gains, right? So I reached out to my old friend Andrew. I was like, I know you're building something there. What are you doing? I'm looking for something to do. And when we started talking, it was just clear we were like in lockstep with this vision of a new decentralized reality that could empower individuals and organizations to do things together, solve problems together, and to generate savings and a better world together. And so that's really like the tagline for Solydaria is we're building tools to harness the power of collective action for the benefit of consumers, creators, and society.
Awesome. So like kind of interesting sidebar here. So in 2017 is when I decided, hey, I'm going to build something in Web3 myself. And it wasn't, I'd been like following Bitcoin forever and like, in the Bitcoin game since early 2013. Never ever really considered doing it as a career, but then I read about Ethereum and I really got into Ethereum, and I was like, whoa, you can create new business models, and learned about DAOs, and I learned about how like, and for me it was like this Venn diagram, which I bring this up because I kind of feel like you guys are like the embodiment of this, where this Venn diagram of like, one, you can do something like really interesting and fun. Two, you can like make like a change in the world for the better. And three, you can still make money. And usually you can only get two of the three. Like you can go work for a nonprofit and do something really interesting and fun. And like, it's awesome. And you're like helping people, but you don't make any money. Or you're like, like making lots of money and doing something that's fun. And you're just like scorching the earth, it's like, taking as much money as you can from your customers. And it's like, or you're like, the other version, but point is like, it's interesting hearing your story, because I hear like Andrew, as Andrew and I got to know each other over the years, like just like phenomenal technologists and like somebody who really knew e-commerce and knew blockchain technology. And then Rafael, when you're with your combination of your skill sets, it's like, anyways, it's really cool seeing it all come together. And also like now, like you guys have real products and you're bringing this to market. So talk a little bit more about what it is. Let's talk about the product a bit.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, Solydaria is like the umbrella, right? Building these tools for collective action, and then the problem that Andrew was mentioning, right? We built a product to really address that. It's our first product, and it's called Solid. So we're calling it a crowd shopping deal engine, right? It's designed to empower direct-to-consumer brands and entrepreneurs to grow their companies without paying exorbitant rents to the big tech platforms to generate audiences, and without a reliance on like huge discounts, right? So if you think about where it is now, like Andrew was saying, you have the great product, you're this entrepreneur, the sky is the limit, and then you realize that you have to pay tons and tons of money to generate traffic to your site, and then you get hit with the classic kind of double whammy, which is, well, once I'm gonna pay to communicate, what am I gonna communicate? And 9 times out of 10, it's a discount. It's 15% off if you give us your email address. It's some way of like cheapening your brand, destroying your margins, and training your shoppers and your customers and your community in like this kind of perverse way, right? Like, wait so that tomorrow we're going to mark our inventory down by 75% and send you a coupon, right? So this kind of problem on the discount side is what's like destroyed like J. Crew. It's destroyed a lot of brands, right? Big household name brands, and they're like really struggling from it. So so Solid is like, we're like, wait a minute, we buy things all the time as consumers. We're especially as Americans, right? Like 70% of GDP is our consumer spending, and it's something that we often don't do together. Like, we very rarely do it together. And so we ask this question, like, well, wait a minute, what if people bought things together, harkening back to like cooperatives, right? Or even like Costco, right? Or membership clubs, or buying communities, buying cooperatives. Like, what kind of power could we unlock? What kind of problems could we solve that create these win-win commitments? And so when we think about Solid, like that's really what we tried to build. And it's designed to like, just try to like, not level the playing field, because the field is already totally screwed, right? It's to change the game, right? Like to just change the way that brands can connect to their audiences.
Yeah, and so most commerce. Let's talk a little bit about commerce today, and then we'll get into some other questions. I think it's pertinent right now at this point in the conversation. So, I mean, for me, I kind of feel like, if something's on Amazon, boom, it's the easiest way for someone to buy anything. But the reality is, where it seems like there's a lot of products, you're funneled into a very, small set of products that are in the warehouse that are going to get shipped to you like tomorrow or in 2 days. Okay. And as a, producer of those products, you better be ready to like create huge volume and have very low margin. And guess who's eating your margin?
Yep.
Amazon. Okay. So, if you don't want to play that game, if that's not your audience, then you're like living on Instagram. You're like trying to just connect people through influencers, or like different flash deals, or like some cool factor, or like some like unique angle, but it's just really hard. Right. And would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Like where are we in the state of e-commerce, and then maybe talk a little bit more about how maybe connect that. I'd love to hear you connect that to the, this problem and why you're building what you're building.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, so, your point about Amazon is so important, and, eating margins, right? Like, Amazon is a monopoly, like anti-competitive in many, many respects. They're actually a huge advertising business, right? So if I kind of consider it in some ways like their platform operates, as a seller, you might as well be trying to buy search ads through Google in a sense, right? Because you're trying to get placement. You're trying to check all of the boxes in order to get your stuff on the first page.
And everyone's buying the one that says Amazon's Choice because it's coming tomorrow and it's got decent reviews.
Of course. And so, there are just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sellers that are kind of priced out of that ecosystem, or it's too complicated, or it's just like too difficult. And, they've created a ton of value in certain ways. So not to like totally destroy them. But I think fundamentally, when we look at it, that kind of business model is one of the reasons why direct to consumer e-commerce has become a low margin business. And like, just to think about the absurdity of that reality it's worth it, because it's like, wait a minute, you used to sell to a retailer who bought from maybe a wholesaler or direct to the supplier. Everybody's taking their piece of this pie, and then the consumer pays, the retail price. But now with the direct-to-consumer business, like, you've stripped out the retailer. I mean, there's like 40, 50 points there, right?
Yeah.
Minimum. You've stripped
literally,
out.
you could like drive to Target or like some, big package store, big box store, and you can buy the same thing that you could buy on Amazon, but someone will, it'll get shipped to a warehouse. It'll get shipped somewhere else. Somebody's going to literally drive over there, pick it up, bring it to you, and it costs 20% less. It's like,
it's nuts.
Yeah.
So, this margin problem, as Andrew was kind of saying, I mean, it's somewhat new, but it's become more and more acute. It's becoming worse and worse, right? Because a lot of the big tech, there are like 5 huge tech companies, including Amazon, that basically route like 90+% of all of our internet traffic goes through these companies, right? So the idea is that this is fundamentally based on paid ads, right? This is based on buyers or on sellers trying to reach buyers to get them to see their product, to get them to buy something. And, that has all sorts of other negative impacts. But right now, it's like super, super expensive, and it's super invasive. It's invasive to our privacy. And so the story going on right now is like, because Apple took a stand on privacy, supposedly, about a year ago, everyone's like, oh, that's why the ads aren't working anymore, like, because privacy, right? And what Apple effectively did is they simply said, when you download an app from our store, we need to ask you as a user if you want this app to be able to track you across all your other applications.
And share your data with all the other apps.
Of course. And it's no surprise to me. Actually, I got to tell you, it was surprising because the numbers were 90+% of people that opted out. They said, no, like, we don't want this, right?
Yeah.
And so,
allow the application to track you while you're not using it.
When you put it that way, yeah.
Why would I do that?
So that's, really, that's the boogeyman for the current problem. Yeah. But the real problem is the business model itself, right? There doesn't need to be, and this is where blockchain gets really exciting, and I think what we've built, it gets really exciting. It's like, you don't need to have these intermediaries that are standing in between the buyers and the sellers, articulating based on the highest bid, incidentally in an auction that they create and operate, right? So they make the market for your audience, for the audiences, then they sell it to the highest bidder at their prices. Mm-hmm. And, it just doesn't need to be that way, right? What if we could do this directly, right?
And the other thing, well, this outlines kind of the broken deal for the merchants, the sellers, the creators, the people that are producing goods. On the consumer side, Jack even said it, Amazon is a funnel, right? You're just being herded down. It's a monolithic experience without any serendipity, with minimal discovery, where you're just kind of being shoved like the cheapest product at the highest margin, and you get it, and because it's fast, it's convenient. But all the joy, all the quality of an experience, all the like maybe Amazon even 5 years ago, like whatever you order first thing on Amazon right now is going to be a piece of crap. You just having these boxes coming in that are just, it's just not good product. And, Amazon has been flooded with a lot of kind of, shady kind of merchants as well. So the whole trust component is out the door. Amazon reviews are, fake.
Oh yeah, they're like review factories. Like I've
exactly.
Stories. I've just kind of like adjacently learned a lot about e-commerce just by, being a tech entrepreneur for a long time and B2B and enterprise software. And it's just, all the paid reviews and just this whole review cartel game. And it's just, it's nuts. And also just all the referrals and even the review websites are really just funneling mechanisms that send you back to Amazon.
It's manipulative. And at the end of the day, you're not happy. Your life is not better. And you just had all this stuff shipped to you for way cheaper, made for cheaper. It's going into the trash. We're burning up all the all this gas doing this. And like, this is not like a step forward. This is just adding more money to somebody who shoots rockets into space without that kind of going back to the community and improving it. And the engines of that are the consumers, and it's the small people, the creators, the ones that actually care about a direct connection. Yeah. And, they haven't had alternatives. And with Solid, we started digging at that, and we started with the customer experience, with the shopper experience first, because they're the customers of our customers. This has to be amazing for them. This has to be wow. This has to be fun.
Yeah, you don't want to do that where you're just like, oh, like me, I'm like, I don't want to buy this on Amazon, but I can just hit it, 1 or 2 buttons, and it's coming. And the other ones, I'm like, I have to do that again, and get my credit card. Where's my credit card? So you have to. So
you have to make it way more convenient. Every step, we sweated it. We took it out. So for you to participate in a Solid deal, for you to participate in a promotion, there's components that, are like a game, right? And it's exciting. And it's something that we've hoped to imbue with this word of mouth quality, with virality, to create something where you find a great store, you find a great product, and there's a really good reason for you to tell somebody. Because if you do, it's going to work for them. It's going to work for you. It's going to work for the people that came before you, and it's going to work for the people that came after you. And it's going to really work for the merchant too.
Yeah. Do you have a Web 2 analogy? Like, is there kind of like a, Web 2 similar comparison for Solydaria?
Yeah. We kind of we had this kind of awakening to it, looking for our heuristic, right? The Uber for ice cream or whatever. We think about it like Kickstarter meets Costco. And, there's like, Kickstarter is amazing. I love Kickstarter. Just like everything kind of about it, it appeals to me in a lot of senses. And what, their slogan, it's like, bringing creative projects to life, right? So through this power of community, you're helping people to build cool stuff, creative stuff, real stuff, authentic stuff. And everybody, that just feels good, because that's generally, I think, what we want. And then on the other side is like Costco, which, like I told you, I was in agriculture, and like you wanted them as a customer, you wanted to be able to sell your crops to Costco. And as a consumer, you would definitely want to go there to buy your organic blueberries, because they always had the best product at the best prices. And they do that by like their economies of scale, their tremendous buying power, but also their commitment to their shoppers that are members, that they're going to take a wholesale margin. Like, they're not going to do what every other retailer tries to do, which is to just maximize the amount of returns. Like, no, they pay the growers fairly, they get the best product, they buy a lot of it, so they get economies of scale, and they pass those savings on to their consumers. And so when we were thinking about Solid, it was like, wait a minute, this is like that intersection of like creative, supporting entrepreneurs, supporting brands you love, supporting cool projects and cool people with cool stories, and also generating like these savings with your communities, or just alone. Like, we haven't even teased it, but like basically it's like the version that we're going live with now, it's like, it's this crowd shopping deal where, the seller decides what they want to offer. And the more people who purchase that item, the higher the amount of cash back everyone gets. And then it's a time.
They can give the like wholesale, like the more wholesale it gets, or the more scale it gets, the more savings they get, and the more they can give the savings back to other people,
that's right.
Which I feel like is probably a really good segue into the next point here, or next like question. It would be, so when I look at blockchains, they're really good for, human coordination, right? Like getting people together. You look at tokens, they're really great for like bootstrapping network effects, and like, creating like, group incentive models, and giving power to like, the many instead of like the few central ones, right? And really, they're smart contracts or coordination tools. So talk a little bit about like, how is blockchain such a key component to make this a reality? Because the cool thing is you can just use this, and you don't necessarily need to feel like you're using blockchain, right? Which is amazing. You're like using a product, and like which is what everyone's been talking about for years. Like, guess what? You're going to use all these products, and it's not going to be like, pulling DeFi Legos. You're like literally just getting the value of blockchain naturally. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start kind of with the more obvious stuff, and then I'll kind of go a little bit deeper into the woods. So the first thing about actually blockchain is there is and specifically with Ethereum, right? The idea of a smart contract where it's a distributed ledger, it holds data, but it also holds key business logic that doesn't need to be, altered, right? So there's this idea to have a more kind of primitive that's more, simple, and from which you can build much more concrete or more complex systems without having to start with like figuring out your database structure, kind of figuring out your middle layer, then your APIs. Here, you build your logic, your foundational ideas right into the contract, and then you build an API on top of that to communicate that to the interfaces, right? So there's a benefit of simplicity in development, which also entails security right away, right? So you kind of have this kind of like really nice packaged thing in terms of building new kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of when a lot of people say, well, we can do this on Web3, and people are like, well, I can do this on Web2. There's trade-offs, right? There's some things that are Web3 that actually are way, way easier and low cost to do than in Web2. Then, for example, in Web2, you have something like, that is a little bit harder, but those are the trade-offs, like queue management, right? In Web2, queue management is pretty straightforward. Web3, with the nonsense, it gets a little bit more nuanced, right? The second component, of course, is payments, right? That was like the killer app of blockchain was, hey, I can send money to you really cheaply without anybody else. So in the traditional flow of commerce, money is very one-directional and circular. I'm the consumer, I give you the dollar. You take my dollar, you give a little bit to the credit cards. Then I take this dollar, I go and I buy the product, and I send money for the product, and that product gets made in a factory that employs you, that gives you the money. Then I also give money to marketers, and I try to see how this money kind of lines up and everything like that. And that's the system now. We decided to like subvert that, to almost jam it, because hey, with blockchain, you can send money. It just costs you as much money to send money this way as it is to send you that way. So why not harness the power of cashback now and actually come up with a structure that works in a more intuitive way that goes beyond discounts, where we're using that power of payment freedom, basically, which is kind of the number, like the foundational use of blockchain, right? And the third thing is we
needs to coordinate all of these payments there and back and escrows and what.
PCI compliance.
It's all in the logic. If this
exactly.
and this, okay, good, it's done.
And it's that same primitive, the same smart contract. It handles the promotion rules, who buys, who owes money, and then it can coordinate all that as well without you having to layer this like gargantuan like architecture, So that's that simplicity tied with payments.
This is really, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say this is one of the like phenomenal use cases for a smart contract.
You're the best, man.
Right?
I think so too. I mean, we've been waiting for people to, like, I agree. Blockchain is it's gonna transform the world, right? And we're like, but over the last few years, it's like, okay, wait a minute. In what like concrete way can we build something that's like really gonna change? Like, it's gonna kind of be an aha moment. And I feel like we put our finger on one.
Yeah, and Andrew, I don't mean to interrupt, but like I just had to my mind blew. I was just like, like, whoa. Okay, go. Keep going.
Well, the last thing, I don't know. This one is the one that blows my mind. And that is, if you kind of look at the internet we have right now, whatever you want to call it, the surveillance or, the conversion funnels, the customer acquisition costs, the most important piece of data in this whole kind of pyramid, the top of the pyramid is the purchase data. It's the first party attribution purchase data, right? The whole thing depends on that, right? If you saw the ad and you clicked on it, but you didn't buy, or nobody knows if you bought anything, the whole thing just falls apart, right? And the whole reason that we have this crazy complex of different things that are tracking you and looking at you, they're trying to guess, like, hey, did you see this thing? Did you buy this thing, right? And ultimately, that's, we see this shift now towards why Amazon is so powerful, because it's vertical. It knows what you bought. It knows everything that, Jack has bought ever since he set up his Amazon account. They know you to a T. They know exactly what to show you. They know everything about you, right? And they use that to funnel it, to suck out the joy of you discovering new things and just sending you that thing in a box and you being happy happy enough, right? Whatever. So that's when, NFTs kind of started coming on the tail of Ethereum. It wasn't the first wave, but as we saw NFTs, we saw, people use them as, they're definitely an asset, right? People looked at them as collectibles and everything like that. We said, hey, what if the NFT was, the proof of purchase. What if that was that attribution? What if an NFT can store your purchase data, where you bought it, how much you paid it, maybe metadata about the product itself, anything like that. And that doesn't need to be siloed now. It's not Amex tracking where you bought. It's not Amazon tracking where you bought. What if that, UPC code that you cut out, what if that receipt or whatever it is, automatically at point of sale is generated and it goes into your wallet, like your blockchain wallet, right? And what if now you're the owner of that data. It's, everything you bought on Amazon now is not owned by Amazon. Amazon can know it, but really you're the only one who also knows everything that you bought. So from there, we saw that these NFTs as proof of purchase can be this foundational aspect, this kind of like spice of the internet, right? That we can give back now and distribute into the wallets of the consumers and empower them. And from there, we started digging, and it actually dovetailed really nicely with the smart contracts that we were building in terms of tracking who to send money, because we can find your wallet, we can see that you bought this thing, okay, you're entitled to this cash back. And that was kind of how the pieces came together for us.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the data component. So it makes a ton of sense. Like you are the access to because it's all being on a blockchain. So who's outside of that hash is very public, but outside of that hash is all private, right? Without like the right like encryption layer.
Yeah, exactly.
So can the user monetize their purchase data at any point, like, or groups of people be like, hey, well, I'll opt in, to receive your ads because I buy a lot of, like home care products. I'm like, trying to fix my yard every weekend. I'm doing like home DIY landscaping. Then people are like, let's advertise to that person, but that person then can participate in the upside or opt into it.
Totally. I mean, that you basically explained sort of like the future possible world where rather than having essentially like the user has no benefit from their data now, right? We're just eyeballs, right? Like we just spend all our time watching nice videos on TikTok and Instagram, and somebody else is selling our eyeballs, right? And they're making billions of dollars on it. We don't see the benefit. And then on the other side is like, well, the sellers don't really see the benefit either because that data is not really useful to them. They buy it like on a pay for service, but they pay for a click, but they don't really know anything about it. But now, like, if you can actually have like user-owned, private, encrypted data that can be, as you said, you can opt to share that data. Now we're talking about all sorts of possible benefits. So yes, monetizing for advertisements could be something, right? You could have a group, you could have an aggregated group of people. Nobody knows, no one knows who these people are in terms of personal identifiable information, but they have wallet addresses and you can query those addresses and see what's in it, right? So you could theoretically target for messages or ads if the user were to opt in. But you can also do other things where like data that's stuck in silos in Amazon, we're always very interested. Like, wow, Amazon is so efficient. Look at how efficient they are. Look at how predictive, their analytics can be. Look at the AI that they're building to just harness the huge power of all this consumer data. But if you're not Amazon, that data is useless. No one has access to that data except Amazon. So data is everything. It's when are you going to buy something? How much did you buy last time? How often do you buy it? Like there are all sorts of compelling business uses for all sorts of data that can be stored in this way, in a private way to the user, that can reduce environmental waste. They can improve efficiencies of inventory management. We're talking now about trillion dollar problems that we believe, the key is held in technology to solve them. Specifically blockchain as a really appropriate way.
Well, one of the reasons why I get so excited about what you guys are building is because when you're going up against this like 500 or 5,000 pound gorilla, you can't use, the same weapons.
Yeah.
The reason is you can't beat them with technology, a bigger footprint, more money. Like they've got all that, right? But what you can compete with are incentives, because they have to make money. The beauty of Web3 is that you can empower communities to make money. And they can't compete with that. Communities and don't need to make money. They want good products. And so anyways, it's like really, it's exciting. So And by the way, Andrew, one more tech question. Got to ask this because we're on, infinite chains, but clearly blockchain. But what was it about Scale, for you that drove you to want to put this
I think first of all, I started using Scale like 2019, right? You guys were, I was desperately searching for something like Scale. There were solutions that were like API driven. I knew it had to be Ethereum, right? Because there's just so much elegance in the concept, but it couldn't be Ethereum because Ethereum is like an ocean, right? It's volatile. When you go out there, you don't know what's going to happen, right? The prices move of just Ethereum itself. Gases go up and down. You literally have pirates, like it's
a good analogy, by the way, that it's an ocean. It is. You don't know, like sometimes this tide's gonna
and especially being in the commerce space, the ocean is key to commerce, right? This is how we grew as a civilization. We were able to create these trade routes and we figured things out. And even now, though, for tankers moving, the South Seas can be something. So, the instinct was just to find something that was easy to build on, and Scale ticked off all of that. Like the speed was amazing. I was using even other stuff, even like Ropsten or anything like that, like the test nets. Scale just blew me away right away. I was like, oh wow, I can really, hack away and just like feel it. I can feel it breathing. And then, a lot of other solutions, the way I see them, and I kind of call them lakes, right? They're beautiful. They might be a big lake, but you're still in a lake, right? And you can't get into the ocean. Some people are now digging tunnels to like belabor this analogy, people are investing. They're saying not channels, I mean canals. Let's build a canal from, down here. We'll get into the ocean, all this stuff. We'll figure it out. But what Scale to me, again, like belaboring it, but Scale to me was a harbor, right? It was safe. The waters were calm. I could build ships in a yard and a dock. I can sail them even around the harbor. I can see how it goes. And then with the technology that you built, and you guys were always connected to, Ethereum. And then with the new versions, you created these bridges. There's ways to move things in and out. I can take my stuff in and out. So for commerce, really, for figuring out how to move things, how to move money, how to move information, how to store it, and then how to like let it out and see where it goes. And the bigger thing, that's really, to me, has been a huge benefit of Scale. And I think, it's not an easy thing to do. I have a lot of respect for you guys, for the team, and kind of for the vision. And I love that you guys, the gamers are coming to you, right? This is proof to me that you have something that, because there's something really crappy about the game not working, right? And I think it also rhymes really well with, GPUs that were powered, gaming graphics was what powered, this Ethereum. This is how we mine it. And the fact that you guys are good enough for games, that means you're definitely good enough for commerce, and that's why we're at Scale.
Now that is awesome to hear. And for us, it's kind of funny. We've been using this word like de-commerce, like DE commerce, decentralized e-commerce. It's like it's like you need stability, right? If you have a gas fee, it can't be $1 one day and $10 the next day if you're buying something that's $20 or $10 or $100. Yeah. And you can't have a $50 gas fee or even $1 or $3. It just doesn't work. And especially if you're selling like 10,000 things, and if you're going to like try to, even if you're trying to compensate those gas fees, it's just very difficult, like from a business perspective, to gauge that. And so Scale, there's no gas fees for end users, right? And the other piece is that Scale has instant finality. And imagine like, you're doing a big like group sale, or you're buying stuff online, and you go back and you realize the blockchain reorged, and like, your transaction didn't compute. You saw it on Etherscan, but you go back later and like, it didn't happen, or somebody like front ran your purchase, right? It's just literally like, the instant finality is good for certain use cases, and de-commerce we think is one of those. But anyways, it's fun, always fun. I like asking that question to hear people's views. So awesome. So guys, hey, rolling into the last piece of this. So one of the cool things about this is that, Andrew, you've been, both of us have been building for a long time, and Rafael, like, we've been building. SKALE, by the way, I'm pumped. Like today, we just doubled or almost tripled transactions from last month.
Nice.
So growing fast.
Congratulations.
You guys too. Like how can people go use this? How can they learn more? What can they do? Like, I'd love to hear more about, where things are and how people can access it.
Cool. Thanks for asking. So yeah, we're still early days, but we're really pumped because we're going to market with Solid, the first Solid deals. We've got 3 really awesome brands and well, 2 really awesome brands, 1 awesome brand and an artist. They're going to be launching live deals starting the week of right after Labor Day. And so one thing, you can check us out at Solid, which is SOLYD.xyz. So there's a place you can sign up for our newsletter. Then we can send you no messages until there's something cool to say. If you're a brand and you're interested in learning more about how Solid could work for you, upper right corner of that site, there's a little type form, 2 things, and we'll get your info there. So that would be awesome. And honestly, SKALE's gonna be pumping along these deals from these amazing 3 brands, and we'll be putting them out throughout the internet community, and they're going to be using them for their own list because it's merchant driven, it's seller driven to their existing audiences. In the future, there's a ton of applications for us to be aggregating all these live solids in like a marketplace where anybody would be able to go, and if they like this instant cashback via Venmo or Bitcoin, they can go and check out what's on a solid, and they can do that. That'll be coming up in the near future.
Okay, so guys, this is, I love it. I feel like, this is just the beginning. There's so many things, but it's also really cool because it's very tangible how you can get started, right? You get, there's a lot of like people creating great products that are trying to find their audience, and there's a lot of audiences out there that are like looking to buy things in a better way. And I've said this a bunch of times on podcasts, but I'll say it again. Like for people, my age and older, in the past, like data privacy and like middlemen rakes, they're kind of like, it's like, Web3 is a bit of a vitamin. Not for me personally or us, right? Because we just live and breathe this, like that's why we're doing what we're doing. But for most people, I go hang out, and one of the cool things about working in blockchain is I've got, gotta spend time with so many young people, so many people. And you go talk to somebody in the early 20s, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to use Mark Zuckerberg's product or one that's run on smart contracts and powered by the community?" It's like goes from being a vitamin to a painkiller immediately. We're like, no. And, that's this thing, like vitamins are painkillers, right? It's like, if you're an entrepreneur, sell painkillers, not vitamins. Like, help people that like really have an issue and they need something, as opposed to, oh, I'll take this, maybe it'll help me in 2 years. Like this is a problem that's ready to be solved.
Oh yeah.
And I just feel like you're going to find some, just getting this thing up and running in Bootstrap, which you're already doing, like you're just going to find such a strong, passionate audience. And then eventually all the normies, you cross the chasm, right? And mainstream starts using it, but you need those early adopters and innovators. And I don't think, clearly you're not gonna have any trouble finding them, I think, in this day and age.
Thanks for saying that. I really agree with the perspective. And yeah, like the younger generations, they're native to Web2. They see it for what it is in a lot of ways. They get the game, and they're really interested in alternatives. And also, like their prospects are just not as good economically, like financially.
Yeah.
It's just the reality is the number. Like a lot of people are left behind, and it's getting worse for them. So yeah, man, I like that, the painkiller, right? Like what are their pain points?
Yeah, in a positive way, because obviously painkiller has a bunch of negative social connotations as well.
Fair enough.
I need to think of a new analogy, but thinking about social issues, but
the way Rafael said it one time was that, and it's funny you're talking about like the newer kind of generations coming on, because we saw the birth of these monopolies, right? We saw like the scrappy Google. We were like trying out Facebook for the first time, and we were kind of like it kind of crept up on us, right? We're like, oh, wait a second, what is happening here? You know, Cambridge Analytica, Google stuff, whatever, Amazon stuff. Like all of a sudden we looked around and we were in this world, and they were already transitioned. These monopolies transitioned once they had that power. You know, every monopoly will transition into an extractive phase. I learned this from Rafael, right? Mm-hmm. And we're living and we're watching them now just, you know, squeezing every margin that they can and saying, hey, what are you going to do about it? Like Uber too, when they took out the markets, they pushed out the cabs, right? All of a sudden, Uber made total sense. Now Uber is like expensive, but you can't take a cab, right? This is just the nature of business, this nature of capitalism, this nature of monopolies. And these younger, you know, kids are coming into this, and this is the world that they know, right? It kind of could feel hopeless, right? You can't get ahead everything that you try to do. And I think that's why a lot of like Web3 and blockchain and abilities to invest in crypto are so appealing, because it's a new way to generate wealth outside of a system that's already just completely locked off, right? And finding a way through that, I think, is also a really interesting thing that I think is worthwhile.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of think like stepping back, like super macro, which, you know, it's fun to do, right? We're on Infinite Chains podcast. It's what we do. So, I think about like, you know, we're all three of us are similar age, and I think about my parents, and our parents are probably roughly similar age. Like their generation was the real estate generation, right? Yeah. These boomers, like they made so much money just by like, just needed to have a normal job, you know, get a, you know, decently priced mortgage, which mortgages were really expensive even compared to now, but it wasn't difficult. You could buy real estate really, you know, incredibly accessible. Everybody could buy real estate. And now, like, you know, being anybody, if you're a millennial or younger, like it is, or not even millennial, but if you're born like after 1975 or 1970 or something, like you're in a different world, man. It's, but I kind of see this next generation, there's a new land grab, a new real estate grab, and it's in blockchain and Web3, and there's new properties, and, you know, and these rewards go to, and not talking about these as securities, but just literally as like utility, like people are going to get access, and not just by metaverse lands, but literally like it's the next kind of, you know, it's a generational opportunity for our generation to actually access, you know, access value in the way our parents did. Because it's just,
and if you think about it, like, you know, any new technology that comes along that creates a new way for folks to generate wealth in a stable, sustainable way, like eBay, right? Or, you know, Facebook for the DTC brands, that since it's our world, any platform that kind of figures out how to harness that in a way that makes sense is going to do really well, because, you know, finding a new way to make wealth for your customers, for their customers, is something that just gives you a really, really kind of like clear path toward being a meaningful company. And we're hoping to do that, but not aggregate all that wealth beyond reason or at all, but also, you know, to create a structure that supports more growth and more wealth. And we're just creating a system where it can cycle through and be a virtuous cycle, as opposed to something that just extracts.
Yeah. And I think too, as an industry, we're really getting into this phase where people, you know, before it was like, oh, speculate, and that's your wealth opportunity. Now people, you can actually use products and have tokens and utilize them and be parts of these communities and like capture value and, you know, capture wealth. It's actually you know, it's a new phase. And anyways, it's just, we're at the very beginning, but yeah, love what you guys are building. You meet the magical, whatever, we need to come up with a word too for this Venn diagram of those three things. But awesome. So, okay. One last time, where can people learn more? And we will obviously put this in the show notes, but for those listening.
Yeah. Solid, SOLYD.XYZ. That's the place to go.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, you heard it here. Thanks, guys. It's been fun having you on.
Jack,
thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Really good to see you.
Okay. Bye.